Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another amazing episode brought to you by GamesGlitches. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the latest news in the world of Division and the tragedy behind it. As usual, guys, if you appreciate this episode, found it interesting, informative, or entertaining, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button. Really helps out the channel grow. So, without any further ado, let's jump into it. Now, for everyone who is currently waiting for the latest raid to release on April 25th, I have sad news for you, ladies and gentlemen. You will not be getting this raid till May. And which day in May? It is currently unknown which day in May. Apparently, it turns out still have major issues with them. And on top of that, the Dark Hour raid is not promised anymore to come out with the raid based on this article. As you guys can see here, this is pretty much the latest news that is spreading out of Ubisoft after their state of the game, released, and they basically just said, sorry guys, nothing is happening on April 25th. I mean, at this point it's really much expected for Ubisoft to break their promise, because they pretty much already became grandmaster status in screwing us over. Currently, the PTS is already out for Division, so if you're looking to try out the new abilities and the new things, you can, but unfortunately there is currently no way for you to try out the raid. That is currently what they're trying to fix, or the Dark Hour mission. So you can't either do any of the new missions or try out the raid. All you can pretty much do is roam around and check out the talents and the gear change currently in the PTS. Now let's take a quick look at the major changes that they have done to the gear and to the PvP and PvE in the PTS, in case you guys are interested. Now let's take a look at Berserk. Adds 10% weapon damage for every 20% armor max depleted. It will now require 11 or more offensive attributes, and it seems to now only work with LMG, SMG, and assault rifles while they're equipped. Next one is Bloodsucker. For PvE, depleting enemy armor adds stack of 25% armor bonus for 10 seconds, with a max of 6, so pretty much it will stack up to 6 times. It will require 11 or more defensive attributes, so pretty much you're going to be full-blown blue stats. PvP, you will get 20% armor bonus for 5 seconds with a max stack of 5. It will require 11 or more defensive attributes, so if it's a little more beneficial, you get 1 extra stack in PvE versus PvP, so they're trying to not to have it too overpowered for PvP. They're also changing Clutch. Clutch critical hits restore 20% health and repair 1% armor. While you're getting a bump in health restoration, the repair for the armor definitely went down. So they're basically trying to make the Clutch gloves keep you alive more rather than repair your armor more. Next one is Frenzy, reloading from empty grants 20% weapon damage and 15% rate of fire for 3 seconds. Requires 4 or less defensive points, and this was actually nerfed severely. So it got nerfed by 15% in weapon damage and by 20% in fire rate, which is actually severely quite significant. And in PvP, reloading from an empty grants 15% weapon damage and 15% fire rate. Basically, it's even slightly more nerfed by 5% from the PvE. It seems that they are basically buffing the PvE stats and nerfing the PvP aspect. Patience. After being in cover for 5 seconds, previously which was 3, your armor will repair by 5% every second. This will require 9 or more defensive attributes. Now the next one is Safeguard. One of the biggest changes made to the talent, with the change killing a target grants 50% bonus to repair and healing effect for 5 seconds, and requires a 4 or less offensive attribute. As it stands currently, killing a target grants 150% bonus to repair and healing effect for 20 seconds, so it seems like they're literally nerfing it by 3 folds. So we're going from 150% down to 50%, which now kind of makes Safeguard pretty much 3 times as worse as it was before. Next one is Spike. Headshot kills grant 35% kill damage for 20 seconds and requires 5 or more utility attributes. Next one is Spotted. Talent buff to dole out a 20% damage increase to pulsed enemies. requires utility attributes have increased to 5. The next one is strained. 5% critical hit damage is gained for every 10% of depleted armor. It will also require 5 or less offensive attributes. Currently, right now in the game, it's 10% critical hit damage gained for every 5% of depleted armor. So they're literally nerfing this by 100%, twice as worse. We're going from 10% to 5% in critical hit damage, and we're going from every 5% armor depleted, we're now going to every 10% armor depleted. So now we do less damage, and we now have to deplete way more armor. For surgical, the critical hit chance bonus has been reduced to 5% from 8%. We having here another almost 30 to 40% nerf on the surgical talent. The next talent we're going to take a look is at Unbreakable. 70% of max armor is repaired when armor is depleted, and armor kits will not consume within the 5 seconds. This will also require 11 or more defensive attributes as well as no other active armor talent. For PvP, it's actually severely now different. 20% of max armor is repaired when depleted, and the armor kit will not be consumed within the 5 seconds. This will also require 11. So they're basically making every talent that can be severely overpowered in PvP, they're now nerfing it quite severely. This is huge nerf. For one talent in PvE is 70%, and in PvP it will do 20%. So the gear that you wear in PvE can no longer really be viable in PvP because now it's severely nerfed. So don't expect to do the same amount of damage or be as tanky as you are in PvE when you're doing PvP. We have also Unhinged, another talent with a major change. The damage bonus on Hinge has been reduced to 20%, which is previously 25%. Handling is also reduced from 35% to 25%. So they reduced the damage bonus by 5%, and they reduced the handling bonus by 10%. Pretty much nerfing gear all across the board. Now, other talent changes that they also have introduced is, for example, Blacksmith. Killing an enemy with your sidearm repairs 50% of your armor once every 15 seconds. It requires 11 defensive attributes. Another one is Entrenched. Headshots from cover will now increase repair to 10% of your armor. And for the kneecaps, shooting an enemy in the leg now has a 15% chance to apply bleed. And the last two major talent changes are Preservation. For PvE, killing an enemy repairs 10% armor over 5 seconds, and Headshot improves repair to 20%, requires 7 defensive attributes. For PvP, killing an enemy repairs 5% armor over 3 seconds, and Headshot improve repair to 15%, requires 7 defensive attributes. So aside from the fact that it requires the same amount of attributes, this talent is severely different in PvE and PvP, where now you have to consider your gear when going into the PvP after you have done some PvE, because your gear now will be severely different. And the last talent that they have now addressed would have been Reformation. Headshot kills increase skill repairs and health healing by 15%, requires 9 utility attributes. Please note that all of these talents right now and all of these things are only working in PTS and are subjected to change, so hopefully they will reduce the amounts of nerfs that they apply to the gear, you know, because now they've moved the rating time from April 25th, when it was going to basically coming out next week, all the way to an unknown date in May. Hopefully it's in early May, beginning of May, but now we pretty much have to wait for additional 2 to 3 weeks for us to get the PvP, for us to get the raid, and on top of that, they're going to be hitting us with severe PvP and PvE nerfs all across the board, across all of the gear. Right now I have tried out PTS, and I gotta say that the nerfs are quite significant. The damage difference is extremely noticeable, the survivability is extremely noticeable, the gear started to function a bit differently. The viable builds that are currently existing right now in the division, best build, quintillion damage and all of that, that is no longer going to work after the PTS goes live and after the raid is released, unless they're going to screw something up along the line, well, which is Ubisoft. It's already expected. This is going to be a severe nerf in PvP and in PvE. I guess this is their way of trying to push for people to use set gear more, the green pieces and so on. But instead of buffing the sets and making them more interesting to use, they decided to go down the route of every shitty ass company out there and decided to nerf all the other good gear. So people are now forced to use the other shitty gear because all the good gear is now has been nerfed. And I find this tactic a little bit annoying because why don't these companies just improve other gears and so on, just to put it on the same level, or just simply raise up the HP of mobs or balance it out, instead of constantly applying a nerf stick to everything that doesn't fit the criteria. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for watching. Sorry for this long ass episode where I cover all of the things and the fact that there's not gonna be a raid. Figured that, everyone would want to know what to expect and what to prepare for, and the fact that, you don't need to now rush or do anything because now there's not gonna be any raid on April 25th, unfortunately, and we're going to now have to wait till May. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, found it informative or entertaining or anything, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button. It really helps out the channel grow. Thank you all again for watching, and I will see you in the world of Division.